Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Oh boy, do I got a good one for you guys today. I am so excited to open this up. I'm pretty sure I'm the first person to even show one of these things on YouTube outside of NAMM footage, but this is the first of the series of me documenting the new Parallel Universe version 2. And this is the highest end one, believe it or not, next to one other one. Because this thing costs a whopping $2,500, which is very expensive for a USA Fender. But this thing is worth it because it has some like historical significance to it. Well, that's interesting. We've got two toppers on here. What's going on? Oh my goodness. Looks like a couple of our latches have come undone, but this looks delicious. It's like mint chocolate chip ice cream. Fender has now put a new meaning to case candy. This thing is delicious looking. So, besides looking like melted ice cream, what type of strange guitar is sleeping in here for us to review today? Inside. Oh my. So this is the Maverick Dorado. Basically, the story behind this is I believe it's the first time that Fender has ever reissued the Maverick. And if you ever hear me reference a whoopity-woo on this channel, it's because of this guitar in the Rock or Not episode I made on the original Mavericks. So if you're not familiar with that story, how this model was birthed was they took the unsold Fender Electric 12s, and the initial ones were called the Fender Customs. They just put a veneer over the top of the headstock and the back and converted the 12-string headstock into the 6-string guitar. And then they took the body, they took a chop, and they did a whoopity-woo right here, and then that's how you got the custom body, and then they later renamed it the Maverick. So with Fender Japan just recently reissuing the Arrow in an exclusive model, I figured it was only a matter of time before the Maverick would also happen, and then when they did that in the Parallel Universe series, it made me so happy, because I haven't got to experience an original one yet, but a reissue of it, well, it's more of a tribute, because instead of having the Electric 12 pickups, they actually have these new Tim Shaw designed Filtertron looking humbuckers here, and instead of the Mustang bridge, we've got a Bigsby on here, but everything else, it's, you know, fairly similar, except for the fretboard material. They changed that up and used ebony instead of rosewood. So first impressions here, it's just so goofy. These are the type of guitars that I like. If you're a traditionalist, you are going to hate this thing with a passion. But, you know, me, I love this little goofy stuff. So let's go ahead and throw this one on the workbench, take it apart, get all of its specs, talk about it, and then we'll get to that playing demo.
Inside the new Maverick Dorado. First off, this is an alder body. In case you missed the news, Fender's actually going to stop using ash because of, you know, the deforestation, all the bugs that are ruining it. So buy those ash-bodied Fenders while you still can. But this is what it's like underneath the pickup. You've got it routed for 2 humbuckers. So if you wanted to swap something else in here, you could. But as is typical with most of Fender's stuff, their routes are very clean. The neck pickup cavity has their little barcode there that reads Maverick Dorado Ultra Burst. And there's a different barcode in the bridge pickup. But I'm quite curious what this P stands for within the toggle switch cavity. I guess it could also technically be a D. D for Dorado. But here's what you're actually curious about, the original pickups in here. So if you take the cover off, that's what it looks like. So despite these actually looking like Filtertrons, they are not. These were designed by Tim Shaws and they're just regular humbuckers. And at the time of recording this, that is pretty much everything that Fender says about these guys. They didn't really give them a fancy name, they just labeled them BR for the bridge, and then NK for the neck. But let me tell you, these things are heavy. These are the heaviest pickups I have ever felt. I mean, keep in mind that we have the pickguard and everything else on here, but that's almost a whole pound. For reference, a set of normal Gibson pickups are about 10 ounces. But all this other stuff doesn't weigh that much, so it's just kind of an interesting little factoid I noticed. But you have double height springs right there to adjust, and then you've got one on the other side. And just in case you don't know what a Filtertron is anyways, they were initially made for Gretsch in the late 50s. It was invented by a guy named Mr. Butts for Chet Atkins. And they're kind of like a low-wind humbucker that's a little bit chimier. Some people really dig them. Honestly, I don't think I've ever had one. So our bridge is 6.13, our neck position even less, 5.53. And then them together is 2.93. So I think they were kind of going for that Filtertron-esque style because they're not quite as hot as other humbuckers that Tim Shaw's made. So I'll definitely be interested to hear how these things sound. But it's just a standard 3-way toggle switch. There's no like in-between positions, and it's not Jazzmaster up and down style. It's just left and right here. And just in case you're curious how I took that cover off, that's what these 2 screws are for. They just secure that to there. So it didn't require any soldering or anything. As far as truss rod access goes, it is at the heel of the neck. Thankfully, you can just take the pick guard off and adjust it. You don't actually have to take the neck off. Then as far as the controls go, it's just pretty basic here. You got a master volume and master tone with all your typical Fender stuff. But you also get these white witch hat knobs. But I personally have beef with the way that they've set these. It makes no sense. So this is all the way on 10 and it's there and off. That doesn't make sense to me, so I'll probably swap those around. There we go. So now how does this thing string up? Different from the original one, we're actually using a Nashville-style bridge. Fender calls this one their Adjustomatic, but it's pretty much the exact same thing that Gibson uses. It even has the exact same branding manufacturer, so I'm pretty darn sure this is exactly a Gibson Nashville-style bridge. They just rename it for Fender stuff. But that is super lightweight. It weighs nearly nothing. And it also utilizes an Allen key adjustment, so you don't actually have to take your strings off to raise or lower your action. And then the Bixby, it leaves me a little bit sad. Keep in mind, this is the highest end version next to one of the new Troublemaker tellies at $24.99. They've given us a licensed Bigsby, which means this is not an official Bigsby product. They've just licensed the name in order to use it. So usually these are made a little bit more cheaply, but they still function all right. I was looking up the values. It looks like these things brand new are $130, whereas an official Bigsby made one, those guys are like $180. So they're saving $50 right there. But honestly, I would have rather have had just a Fender branded one because they do those as well. So a little bit let down on that considering the cost of the guitar. And while we're on the topic of things that they could have done better, if they're gonna stick you with the Bigsby, why not do the roller bridge? Since this isn't even era correct anyways, they could have chose anything that they wanted. And you're probably wondering why I didn't take the strings off. If you're wondering what Rob Halford is talking about in the song Breaking the Law, you don't know what it's like. He's talking about stringing up a Bigsby. These things are a big pain in the butt. They don't look that difficult, but my goodness, as soon as you try to do it yourself, they're impossible. Definitely get a Vibramate Easy String system for one of these. I cannot recommend those enough. But I would have rather had a Vibramate unit on this, so you could actually convert it from stop tail to Bigsby. I think that would have added more value to this guitar. Because not everybody wants a shimmer bar on their guitar. It would have been nice to have the option. And now here's where things get really interesting for me as a Gibson fan, is this actually utilizes a lot of Gibson specs. So you've got 22 medium jumbo frets on a 24 3/4 inch scale length. If anything, I would say they actually have that bridge a little bit too far back. That's why all those saddles are up towards the front. And a 12-inch radius would have been cool, but they are rocking 9.5 on these guys. But on top of your maple neck sits an ebony fretboard. I was kind of curious if we would get the streaky stuff or if they stain it all black. But it appears, at least on this example, they used a pure black one. And we have pearloid block inlays. I would have liked to have seen like a real mother of pearl on these guys, but maybe that's kind of a historical thing that I don't know about. But we've got some interesting specs here, so let's go ahead and grab our nut width, which is 1.68 inches. And at the 12th fret, 2.03, so nice comfortable neck. Then Fender, strangely enough, calls this a fat C, so 0.82 at the first fret. Then yeah, that does chunk up, 0.98. And here's a good illustration of that. So it is a very rounded neck profile, starts off a little bit skinnier, but then it just beefs up a little bit more and gets wider by the 12th. And the nut itself is made of bone. Now let's take a look at this goofy headstock. You can call it whatever you want to call it, but a lot of people like to call it the hockey stick, because, you know, it kind of looks like a hockey stick. And then up here, you have your Fender Maverick Dorado. And again, this was initially meant to be a 12-string style headstock. So, I mean, in a roundabout way, you might be able to convert one of these, if the neck will take that much string tension anyway. But I want to talk about the unique string tree that I've never seen before. So I was expecting just a metal bar that kind of strings across all the strings, but it's actually strung through it, so they cannot move up and down. So that's like a super secure string tree. And that just gets drilled in place right there on the face of the headstock. Then one other spec that makes this a higher end instrument is they use a nitrocellulose lacquer. So this will naturally age as you use it, as well as on all of the body, but then we're gonna learn on the neck they stuck with the satin nitro. And something else you might be curious about, do you need custom strings to go from here all the way up here? Let's find out. No, it looks like your standard string will definitely do the job, but it's definitely using almost all of it. Moving on to the back side, we don't have too much to go over, but you can really appreciate that strange Maverick shape with the... It just kind of reminds me of like a bat wing or something like that, but your strap button is right at the end right there, and then right here at the top, you do have a cutaway, kind of like a Stratocaster. And I've got to say, not really happy with like the final buffing job on this guitar. Now, I understand that some of these fingerprints might have happened from me handling it, but I know this was there right out of the box from the factory. Because I know the dealer I mainly buy my stuff from, they just ship it just like that. So that's just fairly minor, nothing that a light polishing job wouldn't fix. But here's what the V2 Parallel Universe neck plate looks like. It looks like they have like some sort of special insignia right there, and then it just says Parallel Universe. And your serial number is right there. So as far as the neck goes, nothing too special here. You get a little bit of flame figuring, but not a lot. But you at least have a little bit of wood grain on this example. And in case you missed it on the front, this does have binding along the neck. And again, this is a satin finish, and you've got the Fender tuners. What I do like about these is they do have a pearloid tip. So that kind of looks nice on this guitar. All assembled, this weighs 8 pounds, 3.2 ounces, which doesn't sound too bad, but it's definitely very body heavy. This is a super chunky guitar. It feels heavier than that due to the weight distribution. So let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how these Tim Shaw pickups sound. Now that we know all about the Maverick Dorado from the Parallel Universe version 2, what are my final thoughts on this thing? Would I ultimately recommend it? Nah, I don't think so. I was really hoping I was going to fall in love with this guitar, but nothing really stood out to me. But I did make a pros and cons list here, so you can consider this if it would be worth it for you to buy. So what's nice about this guitar is it's a cool body shape. It's an awesome reissue of a guitar that not everybody knows existed in late 69 and early 70. It's just kind of a piece of Fender history, so them reissuing it really is a big deal, and I appreciate Fender doing this. So it's a win in my book.
look under that category, and they got some really cool finishes on these guys. Honestly, I kind of regret my choice of Ultra Burst. Sure. After seeing the mint green case, I probably would have went with the green one, or you know, going along with the name Dorado, like El Dorado. That's like one of my favorite movies as a kid, you know, the City of Gold. I probably should have went with the Fire Mist Gold version, so I guess that's on me. I ended up making the wrong finish choice, but I had chose this one because I liked that it got the burst on the headstock instead of just the solid color. But the one thing I absolutely adore about this guitar are the clean tones out of these new Tim Shaw Filtertron-esque looking pickups. It definitely is super chimey. I love the middle position. The bridge doesn't quite have as much bite as you're used to, but it's still, you know, a familiar tone, and that neck pickup nice and juicy. I was really getting some like jazzy vibes out of this guitar, which was, you know, kind of interesting with a shape like this. And what's not to love about this mint green case? I think they were trying to go for like an alien vibe, but it just came off as ice cream. So maybe they should have went with a darker green color, but you know, it's a cool case nonetheless. But now the downsides. This thing did not want to stay in tune if I tried any type of alternate tuning. So maybe that just has to do with, you know, I need to stretch the strings more. I mean, it's not like I wasn't stretching them at all, but once I put it into standard tuning, everything was okay there. We kind of already talked about how you can help with that with a roller bridge, maybe even upgrade to locking tuners, things like that. And that kind of bleeds into my next point. It just doesn't seem to be worth $2,500 outside of it being kind of a collector's piece. Had this been limited to like 100 or 200, then yeah, I could see it. But usually with these Parallel Universe series, they make as many as they can realistically sell. I've never seen official numbers posted anywhere for any amount of these. But for that price, I feel we could have had a few higher end components on here. And the other thing that really annoyed me is when I kicked the distortion on for this guitar, this bridge pickup just squealed. It was not liking my setup. And that's kind of strange because I don't have many guitars that don't like my setup. So for the playing demo, I really had to turn this down to about 5 or 6 in order to even be able to play this without that coming through. So is it the pickup's fault or my amp's fault or pedal's fault? I really don't know, but this is the only guitar that's been doing that lately. But that also means you should be able to get some cool overtones out of this, so maybe just use a light drive instead of like something super heavy duty. But how does it actually feel to play one of these things, just in case you know you've never had a Maverick before? It's not the most comfortable to sit down with. It kind of slides around, so I'm sure if you're more used to Fenders, it wouldn't be too bad. It's just the weight distribution. There's so much weight right here because of the Bigsby, it keeps wanting to fall. But once you put this thing on a strap, it's nice, balanced, and comfortable. I mean, the giant headstock feels a little bit out of place, but you know, it's kind of like an Explorer. You want to stab someone with it, or in this case, you can play some hockey. So in the end, would I ultimately recommend it? Not if you've got $2,500 and you're looking for your first guitar, you want the best thing, because there's a lot of other guitars that'll give you a better value, even within the Fender family. Like I did a few reviews of the Ultra series. I mean, those guys have, you know, the super contoured heel joint. They've got compound radiuses, locking tuners, also tremolo systems on it, depending on which model you get. And those guys are $2,000 or less. You really are paying for the limited edition factor of these guitars. So if you're a collector, yeah, definitely pick one of these things up. I think this is what this market is more towards. So I hope you troglodytes enjoyed getting to get an up-close look at the Parallel Universe version 2 Maverick Dorado. Let's go ahead and check it out under Blacklight before we say goodbye. Under Blacklight, not too much to go over. Looks like our knobs glow, and in time, this finish will age and glow because it is a true nitro finish here. Back of the neck, usually the satin finishes do glow on these Fenders, and hey, our pearl tuner tips also are glowing. And here's another look at this case. The only downside to this mint green color is it's gonna show black scuffs very prominently. You can even see like when dust is on it, it kind of turns like a grayish color. So that is one downside, but the black handle, I kind of wish they would have went with black chrome to match everything else with the latches, but you get 2 locking latches on either side and a clasp in the middle. Then inside the case itself, it's got that black crushed velvet-like material. And as far as case candy goes, it looks like we get a bunch of silica packets, just a little tag,
your Allen keys, the case keys, your certificate of authenticity. Kind of sad that they don't get anything super special, seeing as this is supposed to be a limited edition. The lacquer finish pamphlet, the Fender manual, and the little bag you'd put all this stuff in. Here's another nice little touch. Inside your compartment in here, it's also got the green lining on the inside. I wish Fender would make their COAs and pamphlets a little bit smaller though, because these don't actually fit in the case. I mean, this is how it came from the factory, and now my COA is all bent up, so that doesn't present itself very well, so maybe they could work on that in the future. If you think you might be interested in being the next owner of this Fender Maverick Dorado, you can check out that link in the description now that my review is done, because it will be for sale on Reverb. Thank you, Troglodytes, for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.